If you've ever been part of a product team, you know this feeling all too well. You've got this mountain of amazing ideas, a flood of user feedback, but just a tiny sliver of time to make anything happen. So the biggest, most critical question you face every single day is, what do we build next? Answering that is a constant battle. And getting it wrong isn't just a bunner, it can be incredibly costly.
Does this sound painfully familiar? I mean, this quote from a developer debate just captures that chaos perfectly. You have a project, it's been sitting in the backlog for maybe a year, and then right when you're about to start, the estimate just explodes. Suddenly, stakeholders are panicking, the budget is shot, and the team is under this immense pressure. It is a total nightmare scenario, and it plays out way too often.
But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be this way. The solution isn't about just guessing better or, being the loudest person in the room. It's about bringing in structured frameworks that help us be more disciplined, that help us replace those gut feelings and strong opinions with a much more objective, data-informed way of making decisions.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll really define that core problem. Then, we'll jump into two powerful ways to prioritize, Rice and Moscow. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of estimation, with story points versus t-shirt sizing. We'll show you how to put it all together in a really practical way, and we'll wrap up with the most important idea of all. This stuff isn't about the numbers, it's about having better conversations.
Okay, so let's start with the big one, the fundamental challenge that pretty much every single product team on the planet faces. You've got a backlog that is just bursting at the seams with potential features, user requests, tech debt, you name it. But your resources, your team's actual time and energy, they're finite. So, how do you choose?
Now, before we go any further, it is absolutely crucial that we separate two ideas that are related but are totally distinct. Prioritization is all about deciding what to build. It's strategic. Estimation, on the other hand, is about deciding how big that work is. That's more tactical. You need both, and they totally feed into each other, but they are not the same thing.
All right, let's dive into prioritization first. Look, there are dozens of methods out there, but we're going to focus on two of the most popular and, frankly, most effective ones. Rice and Moscow. Just think of them as two different tools in your toolbox. Each one is perfect for a different kind of job.
So at a really high level, the difference is pretty simple. Rice is all about the numbers. It's quantitative. It gives you a score, which makes it awesome for comparing a whole bunch of really different ideas. Moscow, though, is qualitative. It's about sorting things into clear buckets, which is perfect for getting everyone on the same page about what's essential for, say, a specific release.
Let's break down Rice, starting with R for reach. This is great because it forces you to think beyond just your pet projects and answer a really simple question. How many actual people will this feature touch in a set amount of time? And we're talking real numbers here, like customers per month or signups per quarter. It's that first step to grounding your decisions in actual data.
Next up is I for impact. So this measures the depth of the effect. How much is this really going to move the needle on your main goal? To keep things simple, teams often use a scale, a 3 for a massive impact, a 2 for high, and so on, all the way down to a 0.25 for something minimal.
Then we have C for confidence, and honestly, this might be my favorite part because it's like a built-in reality check. You might be totally convinced an idea will have this huge reach and massive impact, but what data do you have to back that up? Confidence is just a percentage that forces you to be honest about how much of your estimate is based on facts versus just a hunch. And finally, we have E for effort. This is the cost, the price you pay. How much total time is this going to take from product, design, and engineering all combined? A really common unit here is person months. So the amount of work one person can do in 1 month. This is the denominator in our formula. So a higher effort is a bad thing.
So here is where the magic really happens. You multiply your reach, your impact, and your confidence scores together, and then you divide that whole thing by the effort. The number that pops out, the Rice score, gives you this single objective value that basically translates to total impact per time worked. It is an incredibly powerful way to compare totally different kinds of ideas against one another.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about Moscow. This isn't a formula. It's a framework for having a conversation. You sort everything into 4 simple buckets. Your must-haves are totally non-negotiable. Should-haves are important but not critical. Could-haves are those nice-to-haves you'll add if you have time, and won't-haves are things you all agree are out of scope for now. The real power here is alignment. It gets everyone, from developers to executives, on the exact same page.
Okay, so we've got our prioritized list.
But to calculate that E for effort in our RICE score, or even just to figure out what fits into a release, we've got to estimate the work. So let's look at two of the most popular languages teams use to talk about effort: story points and t-shirt sizing.
Now here's the trap that so many teams fall into. The second you start estimating in hours or days, you're basically making a promise. But what happens when a task takes one developer 3 days, but it takes another developer 6? Your estimate is instantly broken. So how do you talk about the size of something in a way that's consistent no matter who's doing the work?
Well, the answer is this beautiful little concept called relative sizing. Think about it like this. Forget how many minutes it takes to eat a piece of fruit. Instead, just ask a simple question. Is eating a mango about twice the effort of eating an apple? Is a melon, say, 4 times the effort? The relative size between them stays the same no matter who's doing the eating. That right there is the core idea behind modern Agile estimation.
Now, to express this relative size, teams usually pick one of 2 languages. Story points often use the Fibonacci sequence, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Those growing gaps between the numbers are there to remind you that there's more uncertainty with bigger tasks. The other way is t-shirt sizing, using labels we all get: small, medium, large. It's a bit less granular, but it's often way faster and more intuitive.
And that brings up a really key point in this whole debate. Like one developer put it, using numbers can create this false sense of precision. Calling something an 8 just feels way more scientific than calling it a large, right? But they're both just abstract labels for effort. T-shirt sizing just kind of leans into that uncertainty that's always there in software development.
Okay, theory is great, but how does this all actually work day to day? Let's walk through how you can take these ideas and actually implement a RICE scoring system in a tool you probably already use, like JIRA, and really bring this stuff to life.
Setting this up is actually pretty straightforward. First, you just create 4 custom fields for your RICE components. Now, the next step is the most critical one. Your team has to agree on what the scales mean. What does an impact of 3 really look like for you? Then, you just create a formula field to do the math. After that, it's simple. For every new idea, you fill in the 4 inputs, and you can instantly sort your entire backlog by a single objective score.
Let's see it in action. Imagine you want to build a new user onboarding flow. The team estimates it'll reach about 1,000 new users a month. The impact should be massive, so you give it a 3. You've got good data, so your confidence is high, let's say 80%, or 0.8. And finally, the team estimates the effort at 2 person months. The formula does its thing, and boom, a RICE score of 1,200. Now you have a concrete value you can compare to everything else in your backlog.
So we've covered the mechanics, but now I want to talk about the philosophy. Because if you only focus on the numbers and the spreadsheets, you are missing the entire point. These frameworks are not about creating some perfectly ranked list that you just follow blindly.
Real success comes down to how you use the tool. Everyone needs to be on the same page. Scoring and estimating, that should be a team sport, not something one person does in a silo. You have to revisit your definitions and scales regularly to make sure they still make sense. And most importantly, you have to remember that these scores are a guide to inform your judgment, not a rule to replace it. The goal is to spark better conversations.
So I'll leave you with this one question to take back to your own team. Take a hard look at the processes you use for making decisions. Are they actually forcing you to challenge your assumptions, to discuss trade-offs, and to align on what truly matters? Or are they just an exercise in filling out fields in a spreadsheet? The answer to that question will tell you everything you need to know.